Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset and the Entrepreneurial Entry, the entry strategies of an entrepreneur. This is actually a last part here, and I said it's most important for an entrepreneur to find the right problem solution fit. And it starts defining the problem. Let's go to that example. Which product actually was more successful? The Apple Newton or the Palm PDA? So this is the Apple Newton, and at the same time the Palm PDA came out. Actually, roughly, it was the same time. So they were tough competitors, and actually they went in the market, and well, let's see what happens. But going back to what I'd like to tell you is the first step, entering a market, requires understanding the customer problem. And based on the customer problem, then you can develop your solution. But always remember, understanding the problem comes first. And this is when you remember Steve Blank saying there are no facts inside your building, so get the heck outside. You should do some research. You could go out to interview customers. You should actually listen. So remember the guy who told me, just shut up, go outside, look at your customers, try to understand what they do, listen to them, just observe them, try to really find out about the problem. Because if you haven't defined the problem properly, remember Maple with the restaurants and so on. If you haven't defined the problem properly, your solution leads to the wrong point. And then you'll probably not finding the right solution for that problem, or you're finding not the right solution for the market because the market has a different problem statement. When it comes to the second stage, actually, this cannot be done via research. So that's the end of researching. You can do research for your problem statement. You cannot do research for your solution. Why is that? Because remember what Steve Jobs says, a lot of times people don't want what, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. Now it's very often, I mean, when he came on the market with his products, people haven't seen that before. So they got to know it by Steve Jobs, and he was really successful in doing that. Well, in the Apple Newton too, let's see. So the solution is not derived from market needs, but from the startup itself. That's really the kind of creative process of finding something that surprises people. It's created by experimenting actually with the problem. So the first step, and again, we're here, the first step is finding the problem. And there, market research is a good method to come up with. I'm not saying you should do market research on the solution. Do market research on the problem. Derive problems from market research reports as provided by agencies, work with focus groups, Delphi technique, problem interview, survey-based interview. Look at the design thinking methods, what they provide as understanding the problem, which is in the idea generations tools chapter. So this is just an example for a problem interview approach where you can try to talk to customers and try to understand their problems or different problems, and try to document that and phase it actually down to the one problem you'd like to tackle. But here, market research, going into the market, going to potential customers, trying to understand their problem is actually most important. Only if you've done that in a proper way, remember Maple, then you can work yourself towards a solution. And the solution development is actually a very creative process. And it's so creative that many people cannot imagine what's coming out there. Remember Henry Ford at that moment who said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So you can't ask people anymore. You can't go outside. You have to be creative first. Creativity tools, we saw a couple of creativity tools, idea generation tools, experimenting and so on is necessary. But that actually leads to the increased uncertainty, because it leads to something more radical on the market. And if something more radical means you use a new technology and you don't know how people adapt the technology, so you have a technology uncertainty, you have a market uncertainty, maybe you have a management uncertainty because you're not, as a founder, are not able to perform that. You have financial uncertainty because nobody wants to finance that, and so on. Which started in the effectuation chapter, actually, on affordable loss. But how do you go forward with that? Well, actually, there's no answer in that chapter. It's the next chapter is next week, where we go into the lean startup approach. Because the lean startup approach, in combination with effectuation, gives you the best ideas what you should do in order to tackle those markets. So if you have identified the problem and you have identified the first solution for yourself, then the most important step is to reduce the uncertainty. We learned how to do that using effectuation techniques, especially saying, okay, what am I willing to lose to reduce the uncertainty? But the answer to what I especially do there is coming up in the next week with the so-called lean startup approach. And lean startup approach tells you how you can work yourself into that market. But before we go over to that, what's the success story of Apple versus Palm PDA? Actually, both products failed at the first moment. So when they came into the market, the first products, they weren't the market success, which was for Apple a sign to say, okay, our product is not good enough. We need to go back into our own labs. We need to try to understand what a small computer is really about. We need to have new features, better features. We'll come into the market with new and better features, and then we'll be very successful. What did the Palm PDA people do? Actually, they didn't have the money. That was one thing. That was the big issue, which also tells you, by the way, having too much money might not be the best thing, because they didn't have the money. So they went out to their own customers and asked them, why did you buy this thing? And the customer answer was actually, yeah, because I wanted to get rid of my messy paper calendar. Both companies then, actually not both companies, but Palm people then understood what the real problem was. The real problem was not that they wanted a small computer. The real problem was that they wanted to replace the messy calendars. And by understanding the real problem, they went into department stores, they bought paper calendars, they tried they experienced how to use paper calendars, and they basically programmed that kind of usage into the next generation Palm PDA and went to the market again. And this is why they were successful with the next product. And the Apple Newton, which became more powerful, but also more complicated, disappeared from the market because it wasn't serving the right problem. That again shows you how important it is to define the right problem in a proper way. And only if you've done that, then you can go into the next step, which is also coming up next, finding the right solution. And finding the right solution is basically experimenting yourself into the markets, and experimenting yourself in the market. The lean startup approach is the best way to do that, with all the knowledge about effectuation and helps you to define your affordable loss, to work with contingencies and so on. So these two theories, or one is a theory, one is a concept, actually complement each other in that moment very, very well. This is why the next chapter is about the lean startup method.